So I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Great Island Advisory Committee to order on July 23rd. And it's 7:02. Hey, John. So Chairman's report, a brief update on 23A. Work is set to begin August 4th. So you know that we had said July 28th, but it will start August 4th. And the island then will be closed to pedestrians from dusk to 4 o'clock, and then open from 4 o'clock. It'll be closed from dawn to 4 o'clock, and then from 4 o'clock to dusk, pedestrians will be allowed, and then on the weekends it's regular hours. We're placing the order for the furniture this week. Some items may arrive in 3 weeks or so, and some items may take a little longer, could be 12 to 14 weeks, somewhere in there. So we will keep you up to speed on that, and we will post on the 23A any changes to that. We will be posting on social media, and we'll have signs down at Pear Tree and in front of the island. But right now it is August 4th. Last is we've had some sightings of the eagles on the island, 3 of them. So I'm guessing one of them is a baby and it's flying, so that's a success. And the bridal trail is now open until mid-February. So again, no dogs in that area, but we're hoping you'll take a stroll through. Next item is public comment. Do we have anybody that would like to give public comment?
Yes, we do. 1 second. Okay, Alexis Sweet, you have been asked to unmute. You should be able to speak now.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Okay, did that work? Okay, sorry, I'm in a weird place. Alexis Sweet, 20 Beverly Place. The master plan may be a done deal, but what comes next is not. Accommodate private and commercial events on Great Island, the zoning would have to change, and lo and behold, the town is exploring that. This is concerning. Turning Great Island into a bespoke zone looks like an attempt to rewrite the rulebook, so town leaders now and in the future can do what they want, when they want, with less public input and fewer zoning restrictions. When the town bought Great Island, we were told it was to preserve one of the last great open spaces in Darien. The RTM approved the $85 million purchase when it was zoned R1, consistent with the surrounding area and protected by existing zoning rules. Rewriting that zoning now, after the fact, to allow private events and other non-conforming uses without this special permit process undermines the public trust and the basis on which that purchase was sold to voters. The special permit process isn't perfect, but it has guardrails, public notice, case-by-case review, and a method for appeal. A custom zone blows past all of that. And while protections vanish, neighbors are still expected to pay top-shelf residential taxes. Meantime, I'm still at a loss as to how anyone can argue that private events, like weddings, are a public benefit. Darien has 22,000 some odd residents. How many could realistically get married at Great Island? Proposing private events is effectively asking nearby residents to give up their right to peaceful enjoyment of their homes, not for the greater good, but for the convenience of a few individuals who want to throw private parties in a scenic location. The noise, the traffic, the late night disruption, and the environmental impact, that's not borne by the private guests popping champagne, it's dumped on the rest of us. And justifying by pointing to potential revenue, renting out the estate lawn for $5,000, maybe $10,000, it doesn't come close to justifying the disruption and ecological damage. Most importantly, there's never been a mandate for weddings or private events. Residents have consistently called for passive recreation and meaningful conservation. Rezoning Great Island to sidestep public oversight is a convenient workaround. It's a power grab, and every resident in Darien should be alarmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Sorry, Monica, did you say Juliet?
Sure.
I haven't heard you, yes.
Okay, thank you. Juliet Cain, 81 Locust Hill Road. Good evening. I'd just like to take a minute to remind everyone that we residents are financial stakeholders with a collective voice and a collective interest in seeing Great Island, a public asset, managed and used for the benefit of the community. The plan appears to have had robust community input, but the reality was a curated process with no open forum discussion and no response to public comment. The surveys didn't allow for descriptive answers. Many questions were leading and not initially skippable. The Ecology Focus Group asked to review survey questions before publication, but was denied. The composition of focus groups was kept secret, even to participants, making group preparation ahead of time impossible. Most of the meeting comprised presentations, leaving little discussion time, and meeting summaries weren't available for review before being published. Again and again, we heard GIAC members influenced by coffee shop or golf course conversations, hardly transparent public process. The goal to create a space that invites exploration and community gathering is undermined by the new focus on private events and private accommodation, as you just heard. The goal, favoured by most residents to promote biodiversity and sustainable ecosystems, seems to have been lost too, somewhere between GIAC's desire to have dogs on the island, even on some areas designated as sensitive habitat, and this new push for private functions and rooms, on top of the extensive overall use already envisaged. GIAC members have stated they don't have enough information to know whether there are ecological considerations, but have refused to gain that knowledge by commissioning a full study. Biohabitat stated planning to incorporate or enhance ecological function requires an understanding of the relationship of human activity to landscape pattern, process, and change. I urge the new building committee to ensure an informed emphasis on nature and ecology and an emphasis on community and the collective voice, not just a few friends or colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Astrid?
Hello. Hi, this is Astrid Peters, and I live at 36 Rich Acres Road. And I just want to agree with what both Juliet and Alexis have stated. I really do not think this process has been transparent. I think that everyone has tried to give input, write letters, and it just seems everyone is ignored. And when I speak to people in town, they think it's being, it's going to go forward with just passive recreation. That's clearly not what's on your agenda. And furthermore, who is going to be footing the bill for all these projects that you're doing? You know, you should let people know what their taxes are going to be raised to for all these projects before you start commissioning them and moving forward. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you.
And Sable Foster?
Felicia, why don't you go to the next?
I think that would be it.
Natalie Tallis' hand is up,
Let's.
I think. I can't tell. It's not the same color as the other ones.
Hi, yes, my hand is up. May I begin?
Go ahead, Natalie.
Oh, thank you, Monica. I want to begin, Natalie Tallis, 34 Baywater Drive. I want to begin by sincerely thanking this committee for your dedication and hard work on behalf of Darienne's future. As we consider the next steps for Great Island, I urge the town to pause and thoughtfully reassess our current approach. The stakes are high, not just for Great Island, but for the broader environmental health and resilience of our entire community. Darien deserves a process that is transparent, encourages meaningful public participation, and is guided by strategy rather than short-term or fragmented investments such as 23A, furnishings, or an online merch shop. Instead, I strongly recommend we conduct a comprehensive townwide assessment of our open spaces, parks, and coastal resources. Reed Hilderbrand, while not initially tasked with this broader vision, is well positioned to provide the data, analysis, and context needed for informed, long-term planning for all of Darien. The committee's efforts have been hampered, not due to any lack of commitment, but because the necessary tools and information were not provided from the outset. To move forward responsibly, planning must be holistic, data-driven, and closely aligned with our environmental priorities. With the increasing challenges of climate change, we have an urgent responsibility to safeguard our open spaces and strengthen the resilience of our coastal town. A transparent and strategic assessment will lay the groundwork for decisions that benefit Great Island and all of Darien for generations to come. I thank this committee again for your service.
Thank you. You see anyone else, Felicia?
I've unmuted Sable one more time in case they've been able to figure out their speaker.
Can I comment real quick?
Sure.
Hello?
Hi.
Sure.
Stand here or go up someplace?
Why don't you stand so the camera can see?
Sure. My name's Brandan Johnson. I'm at 131 Long Neck. I will leave I guess I agree with a lot of the comments prior. I think something of this undertaking should take a lot longer. If you look at other projects around the world, something this big doesn't take this short a period of time. But I also would ask the committee, someone should do some math on take the 150 houses around there that will be most impacted, take the tax base, assume everybody appeals, and gets a fairly hefty reduction if we're going to have a lot of events. I think the event part of this is a very dangerous, could have a very dangerous financial impact. I don't know what we're thinking of charging, but I think whatever it is will dwarf the millions and millions of dollars of tax relief that the surrounding property owners will likely succeed in getting, because you have a much busier piece of property surrounding what currently exists. It's too much of a stretch to say turning it to commercial, but you're definitely changing it from a tranquil, not very occupied part of the town into something that's going to be quite busy. And the weddings, I think, how much are we possibly going to make from a wedding? That's probably, whatever it is probably going to be dwarfed by one property tax appeal that's successful. So, my 2 cents.
Thank you. It's Brendan? D-O-N?
Yeah.
D-A. Okay, anybody else with public comment?
Again, one more time for Sable, and otherwise no one else has their hand raised. Astrid, you still have your hand raised, but you've already spoken, so maybe if you want to remove that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move forward. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Are there any comments or changes, edits to the group of minutes?
Couple of things. We have on the agenda the May 23rd, but on the June 12th minutes, it says we approved May 23rd. So I think those are already approved.
No, I don't think they are.
Did.
They didn't?
If you look at the 612 minutes, which I read this afternoon,
Okay.
it says we approved
Okay,
the
May
May 28th.
28th.
May 28th, excuse me, May 28th. And the only other thing I noticed on the June 18th, under the discussion of policy guidelines, when it was saying what I said, which is why it caught my attention, it said that I spoke in favor of public access, what I did, but then it said that I then spoke to control parking. No, it said to control access. I didn't then say I wanted to control access. I think I said that we needed to control parking, particularly during peak hours.
Okay.
I think it says control access. I believe what I said was control parking.
Okay, since this is our last meeting, and Linda asked me about the May 28th, I'm going to keep that on this, and if
Okay.
we approve them twice,
Okay.
it's better than not approving them.
Okay.
So, with that correction to the June 18th minutes, are there any other edits, changes? Okay, so with that correction, may I ask for a motion to approve the following minutes as a group? May 28th, regular meeting, June 12th, special meeting, June 18th, special meeting, June 25th, regular meeting, and July 9th, special meeting. Mark moves, Kip seconds, all in favor? Okay, thank you, unanimous. Okay, next item is we have Hilderbrand here with the team, and at this point I'd like to turn it over for the final presentation on the master plan. I just want to remind everybody that the master plan is what we will be voting on tonight. The cost summary that was shared as just for reference, and that is not part of the vote. So just to be clear on that. Okay? Go ahead, Alex.
So we wanted to open tonight basically thanking everybody who has been involved, and I think from our perspective, there's been an enormous amount of attention and generosity from the community and the committee and many other members who serve in one capacity or another have basically given time to us so we can better understand who you all are, what you most value, and how Great Island can fit into all of those hopes for your future as a town. The idea that this island does really provide a new open space for the community is incredibly exciting. It remains incredibly exciting and inspiring to us. We're very grateful and very proud of the work that we've gotten to do with you on your behalf. And I think with that, because we've actually presented this material now, and you might even say something like 6 times, we weren't going to walk through the plan itself. It is available on the website, can be downloaded, and it's broken into its chapters. But we thought as an overview, because there is potentially some folks who are here who haven't been participating in those conversations, that we would go through the high-level chapters. And I brought Meg along because we worked so closely on this together, and I thought just hearing it from a different voice might be a little bit exciting tonight. And so with that, this is the sort of overview, looking very much as though you are flying above the island, down at the part that we're thinking about in investing in to provide access for people coming on foot, by bike or by car, and really trying to contain that set of activities to this part of the island that we're looking at in this view, and with the idea that basically from the stables onward as you move east across the island, that is all really protected, pretty natural ground, and that the buildings are preserved as we know them. And we will walk through the basic chapters right now. So if you go to the next slide. Just thought we would share the core team involved in this. So the GIAC committee, the design team is listed here. Hilderbrand comes and presents mostly, but there's a very large group of people and experts that have been behind us through the whole process. And then we've broken it into these different chapters. The opening is really welcome. Then there is some basic summary of the analysis and basic understanding. I'll remind everyone that there are a whole set of reports about the background studies that have gone into this that are available on the website. And then we take, in Chapter 3, a walk through the island, highlighting the full vision of the future. Chapter 4 is dedicated to a kind of toolkit about what are the provisions that need to be made to sort of provide the infrastructure and support for accessibility and movement and overall improvements in the island. And then there's a chapter on phasing, trying to demonstrate the fairly slow evolution that's proposed. So the first part of that is early access. It moves into then some base improvements island-wide, and then speculating about the 2 future projects that have gotten the most energy behind them as we reach out to the community. The final chapter is about governance, about making decisions, about how to think about operations and financing potentially for these futures. Go to the next. Meg is going to walk briefly through this. I think if any member of the committee has a question or wants to raise a topic for conversation, please just join in and we'll take a minute to talk about that.
Great, thank you, Becca. And I just want to chime in and second Becca's message, which is really just to say how much we as Hilderbrand appreciate all of the community contributions and the leadership and the guidance from the GIAC committee. It's really been a pleasure working with you all, and it's been a pleasure working with the community of Darien and hearing firsthand from you all. So thank you for your continued participation and for your continued comments. We really appreciate having your feedback. It means a lot to us. So starting with
what Becca mentioned relative to the chapters, this is approximately a 160-page master plan document. So for our presentation this evening, we've reduced this down to about 20 pages so that we can really provide time for discussion at the end. So you'll see that we move through this fairly quickly, but as noted previously, this master plan document is available on the website for anybody who has not read it in more detail. Please do go on the website and download the entire document. You will find it there. It's quite extensive and we hope comprehensive in terms of addressing all of your questions. So where we started with our goal here for Great Island is to really understand what makes Great Island special. And as you all know, Great Island is just the most remarkable place in Darien. It's unlike any place we've seen here in Connecticut in terms of what it offers for open coastal access for residents of Darien. We really wanted to focus on three key themes here in terms of understanding Great Island, which is preservation and history, access and activation, and ecology and conservation. And we hope that you will see that as we move through this in terms of identifying our priorities, that those are really the key themes that we've worked to focus on. So if you go to the next. One of those components of preservation and history is really identifying significant structures. So in combination with George and I and his team, we worked carefully to document each one of the existing structures on site and to really understand where their value lies and what their architectural significance may be. So, you know, one of the things that we've really worked to clarify is which buildings are really worth preserving and investing in and which buildings perhaps have less architectural and historical significance and maybe less worthy of preserving or investment. And so, as we've noted before, really the building with the most architectural and historical significance is the stables. Followed by that are the greenhouse, the boathouse, the playhouse, the estate house, and the carriage house. And then really the two structures with perhaps less significance are the White House and the beach structures. If you go to the next slide. So as part of our understanding Great Island, we really wanted to focus on building on what makes Great Island so incredibly special. And the things that make Great Island incredibly special are the existing landscape characters. And those are the things that we want to preserve and bring forward as part of this master plan. So that involves, you know, the extensive, wonderful, rich and deep woodland that is on site. It involves proposing an area of native flowering meadow. It proposes to really conserve and save areas where you have wetlands and wet meadows. It also focuses on really minimizing the extent of open lawn. That's really about activating use where you need it and prioritizing views, but frankly keeping it to as minimum as much as possible. And then additionally, you know, we know that this island has a history of gardens, so where we think it's appropriate to rebuild some of those gardens would be around the estate area, so that as you are on the island, you do have moments of gardens that you can occupy and visit. And then lastly, the thing that makes Great Island so incredibly unique are the rocky outcroppings, where it creates these wonderful, discrete, low moments in between those rocky outcroppings that help to frame your views and create distinct moments for play and strolling. Next slide. So as we go into this, we'll be exploring further how we talk about exploring Great Island. You know, we have several chapters here within the Explore Great Island section. We'll be looking at the master plan primarily, but in terms of project areas, and we really had several in the master plan here. There's the Great Meadow and Arrival, the Cove Peninsula and Boathouse, the Stables and Polo Field, Scott Hill, Carriage House and Meadow, Bridal Trail and Beach, Great Lawn and Estate House, and Sound Overlook and Playhouse. For today, because we've distilled this presentation down to just 20 slides, we'll really just be looking at the master plan. If you go to the next page. So what we want to really bring forward here in the master plan is you can see that a majority of the infrastructure and the network that's already existing here on Great Island is what we've worked to preserve and enhance. So what were previously roadways have now become pedestrian networks and really only used by vehicles where needed for emergency or fire access. Additionally, we have enhanced the pedestrian network system so that visitors of all ages and types of mobility have access to wide parts of the island where you can come out to the rocky coves and have long distant views across the Long Island Sound. Or you can go deep into the woodland and walk on the Bridal Trail. We think that having these diverse sets of experiences within Great Island that really work to showcase and enhance the woodlands and the meadows and the wetlands and the rocky outcroppings, those are the moments that are special about Great Island now, and those are the moments that we want to keep special about Great Island and bring into the future of Great Island. So we hope that you see that here in the plan. That's really what we've been working to bring forward, and that's what we want to make sure is carried into the future.
Should we stop and see? Does anyone have any comments or thoughts before we move on? No? Okay.
We go to the next slide. So as part of understanding how best to do this, it's really about explaining and providing tools for how we support the experience of Great Island. And really that's about facilitating both pedestrian movement, but also in many ways making sure that the site is safe and accessible. It also frankly involves installing, at least the bare minimum for now necessary infrastructural improvements so that the site is safe and it is functional for visitors. That includes really very basic amenities, but it also includes orienting visitors with wayfinding and signage, and it also includes an enabling phase of emergency access and staging so that you have real access to the island. All of that really fits into a design toolkit, and you'll see in the master plan that we've gone through each of these sections in this design toolkit to explain how we might accomplish that. If you go to the next page. So as part of supporting the experience and facilitating pedestrian movement, we really wanted to talk about why pedestrian movement is so important on Great Island. The majority of the visitors here are people who come to walk or walk their dogs or to jog or to stroll with children in strollers or to play on the Great Lawn. So pedestrian movement throughout the island is the top priority, and making sure that we facilitate that in a way that's safe and inclusive and inviting is really what we are aiming to accomplish here. So you'll see in this chapter that we're working to find ways to diversify the range of experiences, but also in terms of being inclusive and accessible, prioritize the use of materiality in different places throughout the island so that it really truly is safe and accessible for all visitors. If you go to the next slide. Now Becca's going to talk about phasing, and she'll discuss the early access phase, and along with that phases A, B, and C, and what the gradual implementation for our vision for the island will be.
So I think one of the things that came forward the most as we had all of these conversations is that there remain a lot of questions still about what the best possible future for some of these partnerships are. And so I think something to emphasize is that there's enormous clarity and commitment as we've talked with so many members of the community about wanting to be able to have access to the island. And also about the stables building and the carriage house and a few other conditions on the island. And so one of the things about the phasing that is described here is that the things that there's enormous conviction around, those are the things that are going to happen first. And then the other things that are really important are basically related to how you make this a safe open space for the community and how you don't lose the investment that has already been made in these extraordinary works of architecture that are there that we don't yet necessarily have a plan for. And so if we turn to the next page, the first project that we have in some ways spoken the most about, because I think it is the clearest to everyone about how important this is and how to think about it, is the phase that is called the early access phase. And this is basically about, as I mentioned earlier tonight, bringing people to the island. I think you'll see that there are drop-off spaces for people coming in cars, for people coming in bikes, for people who are arriving on foot. There is a way to sit down and get a drink of water or go to the bathroom. There's also a place if you do come on a shuttle for some special occasion where we're trying to have more people come for some reason than the number of parking spaces, because even with the parking that's proposed here, it is less than 100 spots that will be available. So the idea that there might need to be a moment where someone is actually dropped off, that is accommodated in this plan. Some of the other things that are, I think, notable here is the idea that that southern causeway really is devoted to pedestrian movement, and that the northern causeway becomes the place for vehicles to come and go. There will be a new gate to ensure that there's no confusion about how all of that works. And I think that's basically the vision for this moment on the island. The greenhouse buildings, I think, will be, with the exception of that root salad, are a kind of backdrop for now, and they will be, preserved and taken care of a little bit, but for the most part, they will function as a backdrop. We go to the next.
Staying with that for a second, I like the shuttle idea, because we had several tours of the island, and having the buses over by the stables was a little challenging. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I think it's just a provision for when something like that. I think there is definitely a hope that school groups will come to the island, and so we wanted to make sure that that works well.
So that would be for school buses also.
So then if we go to the next slide, it's very much the first project. The second group of projects are called base improvements, and this is really related to shoring up some of the conditions that need a little bit of attention related to both of the causeways. That the building envelopes and the structural stabilization of the buildings are made, that overall, as we make the improvements to change the utilities and the circuits, that there's also going to need to be a little bit of management of the landscapes and the lawns, because as you make those other changes and improvements, you do a lot of damage to the existing condition just to get those provisions made. Many, many safety improvements and code compliance issues will be addressed, and specifically a set of site-wide vehicular improvements, which are really, as Meg mentioned, not because we want people driving in loops around the island. The idea is that typical vehicular circulation is kept to the western part of the island, but in the case of needing to be dropped off at the manor house or some emergency occurs over there, there is provision for those safety vehicles to make that journey. Other projects that are contained here, the idea that the carriage house, which everybody loves and has gotten to see, could be a space for the community to come together, is incorporated. The idea that being able to walk along the coast is available, and not, so people are just scrambling willy-nilly over the rocks. So a coastal trail with some of those, of course, is part of this. And then a modest project at the stables in the forecourt to enable events outside and make that safe. Not changes to the architecture exactly, but really to make that a space where people can come together, and we had such a successful meeting there in the fall. And then the last project here is to make some improvements to the quite glamorous terrace outside of the estate house so that people can sit there and look out at the view.
So back on this, the coastal trail, it is continuous, right? Even though it shows a different color?
Yeah, it is, and the reason it's shown in different colors is it has to do with how we negotiate the topography and how we're sensitive in terms of that sort of material question that Meg mentioned. We did get a lot of feedback at the last community meeting when we showed the paths all as one color. People thought that meant that we were thinking of concrete for everything, which was not the intention. It was just a simplification. So we made sure in this plan to address that confusion and to communicate what the different materials are. So where we're crossing sensitive areas, for instance, we need to use wood boardwalks or have platforms.
Any comments from the committee on early or base? Okay. Tony, why is that? Or Jim, why is that up there?
Oh, I think we just did it.
I can do it, or Jim, do you want to do, we have to use that mouse, if you don't mind.
Just hit cancel.
want it to be in Persian.
Thanks.
Could you go back to the last page for a second?
Sure. Do you hear that, Felicia? Can we go back one page?
To 140. Does the loop, when it comes down, it goes this way? Is it supposed to go the other way? Because otherwise you have to cross traffic to get back out? Just a technical question.
I think, well, so the last time we looked at this with the engineering, the guidance was to do it in this direction so that we could drop people off related to sort of accessibility needs. I think, assuming that this plan does make it into the next phase of proof of design, it will get very, very carefully sorted out about exactly whether or not that loop wants to go one way or the other, and I think potentially it may also need to shift slightly more to the north, so there's a little bit more distance between that southern walking path and that. So
Because
it's a good question.
a bus would exit on the right, and if you go down that way, you'd have to cross traffic down, and then you come back up,
I understand why you're making the observation that you're making. I think I can just say that there is so that there's a level of detail, and we've had happily many of the officials in town weigh in on the way that this is organized, and we have incorporated all of that feedback. There is still more work to be done to realize this project. Yes. Yeah, so I think if that is that satisfactory for now, Jim?
Yeah.
So if we go maybe to the third page in the series. So in terms of near-term future projects, which we feel excited about and that there did seem to be a lot of interest in our public process, the idea that some level of restoration of the interiors of the stables would be considered and prioritized is one of those projects. And as we do that, there would need to be some other improvements around the stables outside. And then the next project that will be, I think, a little bit of due diligence about relatively quickly is the question of what happens at the beach. Could that, for instance, be a place where there is some level of kayak activity? That remains an open question until we do the study around the deteriorated seawall there. But there was so much excitement and so much discussion around that that is another prioritized area here. So we can, I guess, are there any questions about this?
Give you like a couple, you're good?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that's it. Thank you.
And we can go to the next slide then. So I think as we do an exercise like this, it's really important to think about long-term future. And I think the projects that are identified here, none of them are likely to be immediately realized, but it is important to understand sort of the strengths and opportunities, limitations and costs, government and operational consequences of going with the possible futures that have been identified for each of these structures. And so that's what this plan identifies. And there was an enormous amount of investigation and outreach related to each of these possibilities. And so we feel strongly that we incorporate that, even though there isn't necessarily a decision at this moment to pursue any of those projects. Go to the next. I don't know if there are any further notes that people want to make about phasing. Okay. So the next part of this, I think, is some of the exciting things that are ahead for the community, which is really about how do you build your capacity to realize these projects. We go to the next. And so I think making sure that there's a governance strategy, an operations strategy, that there are either organizations or individuals who are tasked with managing how use and programming happens, and that there isn't a loss to what needs to be protected on the island. And then in terms of capital improvements, I think you've demonstrated as a community that you are very gifted in this area, but that you do need to have a clear and largely transparent process for how that works. And then funding capacity is something that's very important. We have spent some time on that, talking with all of you, making sure that any investment that is made is tied to your operational capacity and to your larger town priorities. Go to the next. So this is an updated diagram. For much of this year, we had GIAC on this diagram, and we had Hilderbrand because they were the identified parties who were charged with this first set of activities. But going forward, this same sort of cycle of how decisions are made and who is tasked with responsibility will continue to operate. New parties may be assigned responsibility. And the key components there are the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the RTM. Go to the next. So something else that we wanted to stress is that we did look at multiple possible options related to governance, and I think Darian very strongly has sort of demonstrated success with the model of having the town lead basically holdings like this. And so that is the model that has been developed for at least the early phases of the island, and that's what's mapped out here. Go to the next. So in terms of funding, we have done some work just outlining how to think about the projects here that are capital projects and the costs involved there, and then the basically initiatives that are annual operating costs and the differences between the two and how they relate to each other. Next. And I think with that, this is a really in some ways very modest acknowledgement to all the individuals and organizations who supported this effort this year and getting up to this year, because a huge amount of work went in to even get you to the point where we were able to do this process with the community. But thousands of people turned up to support this effort and be involved and follow through. And really, many, many people did stay with the process. And it's been, I think I've shared with Monica, an unprecedented level of community participation in terms of percent of people who contributed and did really engage in different kinds of conversations. So I know there's often a craving for even more participation, but it was a remarkable effort on the part of the community to really get out and support this effort. And we are very happy with where we landed, and we hope that it serves you well into the future, immediately and in long term. So thank you.
Okay. Any comments, anybody?
Thank you to Hilderbrand as well.
Thank you.
An awesome amount of effort put into it. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Dan.
I'd just like to say that, I believe this plan is an amazing work product and is obviously the result of considerable effort and brainpower offered by Reed Hilderbrand, the committee, and our fellow Darianites who took the time to involve themselves in this process. I think there are a lot of wonderful ideas in this plan, and I think that the decision of which of these items to act on and when will, in perhaps a number of cases, come down to economics, and will depend on what the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance and the RTM decide are the aspects that meet town needs. So I think this is a great start, and I look forward to seeing us implement this plan in a rational way with continued input from our wonderful community.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to just share thank you for all the effort, and thank you to the committee, and thank you to the community for the input that we received over the many months. In my opinion, this plan is just the start, just the beginning. There's many components here that can be acted on. There's components down the road that could be tweaked if necessary, but it's a balance, in my opinion, with what we heard in the various community forums and mediums we use for input. It's a balance of ecological preservation, there's habitat restoration, garden restoration, there's structural resiliency. Jordan Knight's work was mentioned here with regard to prioritizing the buildings with architectural significance. Substantially improved access, pedestrian access, and we learned a lot. I learned a lot about various levels of mobility and how that access needs to be tailored to that. And I think there's been an effort on that, while trying to balance that with not impairing those areas of the island that are very natural. And so attention has been paid to that. So to me, thank you very much. Learned a lot, but a lot of work went into this. I think, again, all the folks that consistently contributed, I think it's a well put together plan.
And I think we should thank Monica for her leadership.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
I'd also-
For whatever time we put in, you put in 100 times.
Exponentially more. Yeah.
I echo all those sentiments, but going back to the process, I commend you for getting this project done on time and being an efficient user of our time and the community's time to end up with a product that's already been remarkable. Also, just thank our residents. I've been involved in a lot of city planning projects in my career, and just the turnout and energy and careful study of what we're talking about, what's in the document, great suggestions. I think we can all really be proud of the effort that was made by all of you in the community to lend your voices to this product.
Yeah, I would finish by saying that, you know, this is, it's a plan, it's a roadmap. There was, I think our first meeting was a year ago yesterday, was when you first came. So I tallied up, and I think this group has spent 43 hours with TV 79, so shout out to TV 79 for that. So there's been a tremendous amount of effort put into this, but this is a living document, and I think that a lot of thought went into this early access, but a lot of thought also went into the long term. And I know that every one of us on this committee recognizes that this is a really special piece of property. It's a really special part in town, and we all want to do the right thing, not just for the people here today that are living in Darien, but for the generations to come. So I think there was just a tremendous amount of work put in by your team, way above and beyond, really, from helping with things like, you know, furniture or logo, or, you know, working with us through that dog policy, to coming up with a plan, you know, on time and under budget. Really, you should be, you know, we're really, really happy. So thank you. Thank you.
I guess I would echo what everyone said. I think this is sort of a great sort of product. And I think most importantly, you know, the way our town government's set up is, you know, whereby, you know, things will start with the board. The next step will be to the Board of Selectmen, and then to the Board of Finance, and whatever our land use boards are, and on to the RTM. And I think when I look back in my, you know, almost 20 years of sort of being involved, those projects that had a lot of thought and planning and information and well thought out analyses on what that project will look like in the future, what it can cost, what it won't cost, what we can do, what the different possibilities are. Having a document like this as it goes to the Board of Selectmen and then to the Board of Finance and the RTM, I think, listen, it's 200 pages, so everyone's going to need to digest this over many cups of coffee, but I think those boards can and should and will be very informed about what the big picture can look like. Because the difficult thing when we have sort of 2 or 3 or 4 year terms here, you try to make decisions about, well, what's how is this going to impact the people that are doing this 10 or 15 years from now? And I think this document, I think, will help all of our boards who now have to make these decisions, have a lot more information, I think make better informed decisions, plan financially around operating budgets and other capital budgets. So, long-winded way of saying, I think this will prove to be a very powerful tool as this moves along in the process.
I hope so.
And there's a lot of critical people in that process. So I think having something like this should answer all the questions.
Any other comments? No? Okay. Then I will now entertain a motion. I move that the Great Island Advisory Committee present the Great Island Master Plan and concept to the Board of Selectmen. May I have a second?
So move.
Jim, you're seconding? I moved.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
I move, Jim seconds. All in favor? Mike? Okay. That's unanimous. All right. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is John Zagrodzky. Zagrodzky.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, please.
So just a couple of comments. One thing I've learned in this job is that you're never going to get 100% satisfaction with anything. And one of the things that we've seen in this process is that there are going to be folks who disagree with the aspects of the plan and the document that's been delivered and presented tonight. And that's always going to be true forever. There's never going to be perfect satisfaction. For example, during this process, I received more than a few emails from serious, well-intentioned people that Great Island should be reserved exclusively for nature and that we have no people on the island. I received many emails from groups that thought we should have dogs everywhere on the island with no restrictions whatsoever. We've received emails from people who wanted a 4-season pool on the island. We've received emails from people who wanted playing fields on the island. Some groups wanted horses brought back to the stables, where we would have all the stables completely occupied with horses and back out on Great Island. A lot of people have said we want a lot of cars on Great Island because we want car access. Similar groups of people have said we want no cars, it has to be pedestrians only. The reality is that we've had lots of groups of people that really this committee and Hilderbrand have heard from that have expressed all the views that I've just described. And I think what we've tried to do with this committee and what we'll continue to try to do as a town is to get something that works for most people most of the time. And to further say, as Monica said, I think quite aptly, is to take a sort of living document approach to this. And as we move forward, some of the decisions we're going to make are going to be, hard to undo. We're going to have to make some investments. We're going to need to make some of the changes that are outlined in this plan. Some of the things that we might undertake are actually going to be experiments that we have to run. We've talked about an event policy. This gentleman brought some not unreasonable fears of how that could play out. We don't have a lot of experience with events on Great Island. We just don't. And so what we're going to have to do is start with a gentle policy and run some experiments and let's see what happens, right? Does this event work out? What happened with that event? If it starts to work and it provides a reasonable way for people to enjoy the island without just unduly disturbing neighbors, and I don't think, to your very good point, sir, we have no intention of doing that. None of us want that. At the same time, we're also not going to have a place or a town that's completely silent. I mean, the reality is everybody down there has to deal with parties at Ziegler's Cove and Scott's Cove, and people are making noise even today. And so it's never going to be something that's completely silent, but coming up with something that strikes a balance, and we'll get to that balance that works most of the time by running some experiments. See what happens, see what your response is, and try it. If it's not working, then we'll back off and go down another path. But that's where we're going to need the community input and dialogue to help shape those things that are sort of less assets in the ground and more tangible investments, and to shape policies and procedures to where we get to an island that works well for everyone. In terms of next steps, what Reed Hilderbrand and what this committee has laid out is a roadmap and a series of choices and options. They've taken this all the way to the end to show us if we were to develop every aspect of Great Island, what it could conceivably look like. What we now have to do as a town, starting with the Board of Selectmen, is to try to narrow that down and come up with tangible choices for us as a town to make that'll involve, as Jim said, all the major relevant boards to get to those decisions and to pay for them. And we're going to sort through all that. The next phase of this is to really come up with what I would describe as some pretty clear and aggressive communications about this and trying to boil it down so that residents and others can see at a high level exactly what we're talking about. And it will draw on all the materials that you guys have prepared. And I'm going to spend a great deal of time on this personally with my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen to make sure that this is communicated in a clear and transparent way. As for the Great Island Committee, I think that this was an excellent idea to pull together a committee like this because it provided different expertise from our civilian participants. Jeff and Kip, you guys are here, and I know Bruce and Dan, I think provided absolutely invaluable service. I think it was also great to have elected and appointed officials as part of this, which represent a broad swath of the community. I think in terms of what happens next with this being the last meeting, what we're eliminating here is a structure and another source of meetings. What we're not eliminating is the input of all the individuals who've been part of this. And so as this goes along and we try to refine communications and come up with what's next, everybody who's been involved on the Great Island Committee is going to have a voice in that process. We will track you down and we will get your reaction to that. We would like you at these meetings. We want you to be part of the process, and to be frank, it's not going to work well without your continued involvement. I think freeing you from having to go through yet another set of meetings and minutes and presentations, I think just enhances your personal longevity, certainly Monica's, but doesn't at all silence your voices as part of all this, and you will still have the same voice in everything that we're doing going forward. You just won't have to do it in this meeting. In fact, you'll come right to the decision makers that are part of this next process. And so on behalf of the town, I wanted to thank everybody who's participated in this committee. And frankly, I look forward to your continued service on this particular important investment for the town. I did want to do a further shout out to Reed Hilderbrand. The expertise, the humanity that you brought to this, the vision that you helped us shape, without your expertise, we simply could not have done, has really been extraordinary. I can't thank you enough. It's been amazing. You guys are consummate professionals and honestly great geniuses at all this stuff. It's really terrific to have your involvement, and I look forward to continuing the collaboration with you. So my message, I guess, to everybody is stay tuned. There's lots more to talk about. There's lots of decisions for us to make. This is all going to be communicated, discussed, and debated in as transparent a manner as we possibly can. I will challenge anybody to show us how we're not being transparent with this from this point forward. And I think I can speak for everybody here when I say that. So again, well done. I look forward to having this discussed with the Board of Selectmen, and let's move forward with an investment that the whole town can enjoy that strikes the right balance across all the topics we've raised.
And I'd like to say, a big thank you to our elected officials. You already do so much for the town, and for you to have spent your time, the little bit of leftover free time you have on this is really appreciated. To our residents, Kip, thank you for leading the merchandise initiative. We're looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to hopefully filling any gaps and anything that we want to purchase on Great Island with some of the proceeds that hopefully will be running into the Great Island Fund, so thank you. Bruce is not here. I think he's online, but he kickstarted the whole furniture process, and I really think when we get that furniture out there, people are going to really, really appreciate being able to take a little break. Dan, your construction background, huge help. Huge help. You asked absolutely the best questions. And Jeff, your overall, your whole municipal planning background is fantastic, and you, and every one of you, no matter what I asked, you guys all stepped up, so a big thank you, and a big thank you to John, a big thank you to Ed, a big thank you to Tony, and to Linda and Karen, and to Jen for everything that they did in the background, so, and with that, I think we have something for the town.
Yes, so I invite those of you who are in the room to come and stand and look at this chart that we made of the island. Incredibly talented artist, Ray Burke, who works with George Knight, literally spent 6 weeks drawing this. And so it is something that we imagine as a poster that represents the vision. But yeah, come and look.
Okay, before we do that,
okay.
because then we'll be milling around. Does anybody else have any other comments? Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
One last comment. It's been said, but I don't think we can end this without a special acknowledgement of Monica and her husband Mark, who has sat through, I think, as many of these meetings as Monica has, for their really tireless efforts. And when we say Monica was really working 100 times as much, who is the person who would spend hours on the phone individually with all the people in this group? Who's the person who spent all the time with Hilderbrand to try to be helpful? Who showed up at every workshop? Who went to where they manufacture this furniture to look at it, to make sure that it was going to be the right furniture choice for our town? I can point to 100 other things that she's done, large and small, behind the scenes, with nobody noticing and nobody saying thank you, that really made this work. It has been a very challenging task that you've risen to in ways that are so extraordinary I can't count. And I'd just like a round of applause for Monica.
All right, that's great. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn? Mark moves, Kip seconds, all in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
night.
We're the drawing.
Thank you.